Senator Abbott.
Timing is everything, right?
All right, Chair recognizes Senator Abbott. Thanks.
Do I need to give you this?
Yeah. Well, you can give it to me when you're done. That's
All right.
fine. That's fine. Thanks.
Story of my life. All right. I assume I'm ready to go?
Yep,
Thank
please.
you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Avard, I'm State Senator for District 12. I'm here today to present 552, a Senate bill. And today I'm here as a dad. I'm as a grandfather of 4 granddaughters. And like a lot of parents, I think about my daughters and their privacy, their safety, the opportunities they have growing up here in New Hampshire. This bill is about making sure that in places where privacy matters, like bathrooms, locker rooms, that we all use in common sense rules to protect women in privacy and safety, as well as in athletic settings. When it comes to sports, this is about fairness and safety. And on average, we all know that biological males are bigger, faster, and stronger than biological females, and that's just a reality. And when the line gets blurred, it's the girls who lose out, whether they're playing time on a field or scholarships or even losing a spot on the team because they were replaced by biological males. These aren't abstract concerns, and I hear about them directly from parents in my district. I remember a news story a few years back about a woman in high school playing at a basketball tournament where there was a bearded biological male athlete competing with as a trans woman. The news story said that several girls were injured during the tournament because they were treated like ragdoll by this player. One of the coaches forfeited the game instead of playing out of fear that the players might be injured. I've also heard from business owners who are just looking for clear guidance. Right now, the law isn't clear, and people are worried about doing the right thing and still ending up exposed with legal risks. I also think it's important to look where things are standing right now with the Title 2024 Title IX rules, which were recently vacated by a federal court, if I'm correct. And that means that we're back to the 2020 rules. And those rules take a different approach. They don't include gender identity in the definition of sex. Instead, it focuses on biological sex. This shift matters. In fact, this past summer, a group called Defending Education filed a complaint with the Federal Office for Civil Rights on behalf of New Hampshire parents over this exact kind of policy. And as far as I know, they're still unresolved. But it is something that I would encourage this committee to look at because the complaint, and I have a copy of the complaint here. I only have 2 copies. I don't have 20. So if you want to,
All right, if you give it to us, we'll get copies.
That's a copy. But it's something to consider. At the end of the day, the compliance with the federal law is an optional. And if we get this wrong, there's a real risk to federal education funding, and that's not something I think we can afford to ignore. In fairness, this bill is also about safety. I'm from Nashua, and in my own community, we saw a former state representative, Democrat Stacy Lawton, convicted and sent to prison for taking pictures of children in private areas of a children's facility. This individual had access to the bathrooms while he was a state representative. We have 4th and 5th grade girls that attend this building, and they use those bathrooms frequently. I don't care if he's a Democrat or a Republican, independent. I don't care if he's a monkey. It doesn't matter. The safety of these children matters. Mental illness is gender identity, gender dysphoria is still listed as a mental illness. I go to the gym and I talk with people in the public, and they come up to me as I'm lifting my weights or I'm on the treadmill. And there's a lady at the gym. She seems to be the mayor of the gym. She talks to everybody, and there's no sign that says I'm a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or anything else. I saw her having a conversation one day with another lady, and they always come up to me and they ask me questions, and so we were on the conversation, and then I just said out of the blue, "How would you feel if I walked into your bathroom right now?" They both said emphatically no with expletives. One of them happened to have been in the mental illness field for about 30 years. She was a counselor, therapist. And I said, okay, well, what if I had mental illness? Now, this lady told me emphatically with an F-bomb, I would tell you to get the F out of the bathroom. And then, I'm as clear as that compassion, as that conviction was, I said, well, what if I had a mental illness? Her entire expression changed. And she was like into real reconsideration. It's like, well, and that spoke to me very loudly. But then I followed up with, what if that person had evil intent? Can you, as a professional, tell the difference? And as quickly as she told me emphatically, get the F out, she said, no, I cannot ever tell the difference. So, what does this bill do? It basically helps set guidelines. It isn't a mandate. Just to reiterate what it does, it focuses on protecting women and young women in personal private spaces, such as bathrooms, locker rooms, where privacy and physical safety matter. In schools, SB552 promotes fairness and safety by allowing the schools to consider the physical advantages of biological males, generally having the strength and size and speed. SB552 is a middle ground bill. It creates no mandates. I got to repeat that. This isn't a mandate. It creates no mandates and requires no policy changes. It simply gives an organization the option to separate certain private spaces by biological sex. This reflects concerns raised by parents, business owners, religious leaders seeking clarity and certainty under current law. SB 552 does not weaken or roll back New Hampshire's anti-discrimination laws. All existing protections still remain in fully intact. Its purpose is to clarify and local control, allowing schools, businesses to make decisions they believe best for their students and for their customers. What it does not do, it does not mandate sex separation bathrooms, locker rooms, sports teams. It does not force schools, businesses, organizations, or change existing policies. It does not remove gender identity or protected class from the state law. It does not authorize harassment, exclusion, or blanket discrimination. It does not interfere with single-user or family restroom options. Final point, again, Title IX, talking points, and that's what I have in bold letters here. It says that no person can be discriminated against based on sex in any education program or activity. This includes sports, athletic facilities, locker rooms, admissions, academics, employment, and education, or any other items. I know we've seen this bill before, and my constituents have come to me and brought up what is going on with this bill. I know it's had a history, but here we are again, and I have to listen to them. And I agree with them. Again, we're not trying to mandate, we're just trying to make some clarity. I just went to the bathroom just now, and I saw an individual look at both signs. The individual was the opposite sex with me and went into the ladies' room, and I went into the men's room. I was okay with that. I'm sure she was too. And I don't know, maybe you can do your research, but right now, I don't even think there's a bill that if I wanted to walk into a ladies' room, I don't know if there's a law against that. Isn't that interesting? How have we enforced that over the years? Well, we didn't, but people still respect privacy. And with that, I will take questions.
Question for Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for bringing to us the 6th or the 8th or the 10th bill on this very subject, and you acknowledge that. I want to ask you, I've been thinking a lot about these bills because they keep on coming up. What would you think if we looked at it in a slightly different way? And if we suggested that facilities have one bathroom, private bathroom, that would be available to any heterosexual person, male or female, who for any reason felt uncomfortable going into the other bathroom or locker facilities that building offered.
I think a lot of places do that already, to be honest with you. At my church, we have 5 or 6 different bathrooms, single stall bathrooms, separate doors. And on the other side, one for male, one for female. A lot of places are doing that. I see that in a lot of gas stations, but that doesn't solve our problem. And it could be a major expense for some organizations, maybe not for others, but that's why everybody's looking for clarity. Some facilities can't do that. They're not financially able to do that. And I think this bill basically adds a little bit more clarity. But I think other people are already, I see it everywhere, single stall bathrooms. You can go to a hospital, single stall bathrooms. So it is already being practiced in a lot of areas right now.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Horrigan, then Representative Tripp.
Thank you very much. First of all, you talk about the issue of whether there's a law against going into the opposite sex bathroom. I believe there isn't a law specifically, but there's plenty of laws about harassing or assaulting people in bathrooms. But the reason I raised my hand, you mentioned Representative Lawton, and I served with her. I guess she considered me a friend. It was sort of horrific crime that she committed, but would you believe there's at least one other former member of the House who was convicted of a sex-related crime, although I think he took a plea bargain, so he didn't have to be in the sex offenders registry. And also there's a current member who's innocent until proven guilty, but who's being tried for I guess a sex-related crime.
Is there a
Dissemination.
question?
Yes, so those people were both cis males, so are we perhaps worrying about, and I hate to say this because I'm a cis male, and I assume you are too, that are we possibly worrying just about one group of people and not worrying about another one that's more likely to do these sorts of things?
Thank you for the question, Representative. I don't know what a cis male is, to be honest with you. However, my major concern is, the bathrooms. When 4th and 5th grade girls are there, I don't think you could tell whether somebody is suffering from mental illness or has evil intent. And whether you're cis male or whatever it is, that bathroom really should, there should be the ability for an institution to make policy that says biological, male or female. And please keep in mind, this Title IX isn't going away. This is a serious issue, and there could be some serious federal monies that may be at risk. I don't know, but you can do your investigation. This is your bailiwick. I'm not a lawyer, but it is a concern. Unless you had a question too.
Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. It's interesting the way this bill is structured, and that it gives municipalities and other organizations the opportunity to form their own policies on this. It seems that this is kind of a way of getting this problem into the courts so that the courts can have a swing at this. Because in my opinion,
Sure.
yes,
I assume, Representative Tripp, there's a question in your.
there is. Would you believe?
Come on, give me some better than that.
All right, but this seems to be who's the bigger victim, in this? Is it the transgender people or the biological women? Is this the intent of the bill?
The intent of the bill is to add clarity, definitely to consider the Title IX. Protection of the young biological females, that was part of my opening statements. Like I said, I have 4 granddaughters. I might have a great grandchild very soon. Don't know. A lot of coffee. So, and it isn't picking winners or losers, and we can let the courts settle on that, I guess. But I think when my constituents come to me and they say this is a concern, this isn't me just pulling this out of a hat. We're talking from a wide spectrum. I'm going to be frank with you. I've had certain Democrats come and whisper in my ear, "Thank you for doing this," and they're afraid to speak up because they don't want to be labeled like I hate this person, or I'm against this group of people. But they have concerns, and I respect that. And we have concerns on maybe in the legislative body because, like you said, it keeps coming up over and over again. Well, why? Because it's a concern. The problem isn't solved. Just because we don't win on the day doesn't mean the problem goes away. So I need your help. I need your help.
Question,
Thank you.
Representative Birch, then Representative Rombo, then Representative Turk.
I want to ask you about a couple of things, but since you've emphasized Title IX, let me ask you about that. Understanding that the U.S. Supreme Court has declined so far all emergency requests to enforce bathroom bans. So you go to the next level, and I assume you understand that the Fourth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals and the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals have both thrown out these kind of laws. So yes, the 11th Circuit has gone the other way, so it's fair to say split in the circuits. But would you agree that there is no, and the First Circuit, which has a very expansive view of equal protection, has not ruled on that? Do you agree with all of this so far?
Well, I agree that what your statements may be very true, but I also agree that if and you would understand this better because I believe you're all lawyers, or at least most of you. Some are. But that if the 2024 Title IX has been vacated, then it reverts back to the 2020. I could be wrong. But if that's the case, then it's the old rules that apply, not the new rules.
Right, but we're not, you're raising a hypothetical, I assume.
No.
So if I could switch on then to the statement you made about sports, that men are bigger, stronger, and faster. I think
Generally.
as why you think there should be separation. I don't know if you were old enough to remember the Negro Leagues in baseball, where people of color, baseball players of color, were deemed faster, bigger, stronger, and faster, and therefore should not compete with white baseball players until 1949, 1950, when Jackie Robinson and I think Satchel Paige, Roy Campanella, and others joined white baseball players. The sky did not fall in. They competed.
So is there a question here, Representative Birch?
I will wind it up to. I've had, Mr. Chair, I've listened to, as we say, 7 or 8 of these, and I don't know how many hours of this, roughly the same bills and the same testimony, and I do have some questions. My question is, if the sky didn't fall in and Willie Mays could play fine with Mickey Mantle, and all of the fears that were talked about why people of color couldn't play baseball with white people, why are you assuming this is something different?
Yeah, I don't think there's a moral equivalence on any level with this. I guarantee that Mickey Mantle and all the others used the bathroom that was appropriate for their gender or for their sex. And I would submit that they didn't go into the ladies' room.
I was talking about the sports part.
I know you are, but I don't think there's a
So
moral
you don't have
equivalence.
an answer for that.
Yeah, my answer is
Thank
that there isn't a moral equivalence to that.
Next question, Representative Rombo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I would like to ask about the practical implications, the enforcement here. You related a story of a constituent who said if you walked into the bathroom, she would tell you to get the F out. There are individuals who have transitioned from female at birth to male who look like you. Is your testimony that that person should be using the women's bathroom?
My testimony is that the place where, the facility that adopts a biological sex policy, well, that'll have to be their problem.
But if that policy were adopted, someone who looks like you would be in the bathroom with the 4th and 5th grade students at the State House who you're concerned about.
My concern about it is the safety of those little girls, yes.
And
You can't tell me that somebody who's transitioned isn't suffering from mental illness. And there's no way you or any other person can tell me that that gender identity isn't a mental illness or if there is a perverted sense of wickedness that lays in their heart. You cannot tell me that. But it reduces the risk. And so individuals that choose to change their identity, this bill doesn't stop them from doing that.
may I have one follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Follow-up?
How do you anticipate this bill being enforced with regard to the bathroom?
That would have to be up to the institution.
Can you tell me any scenario where you can see how this bill would be enforced by a given institution?
Once it passes, maybe.
Representative Turk.
Thanks, and thanks for taking the question. And it's along similar lines. And I guess, you know, in the previous iterations of this bill, along the way, there's been a lot of discussion around the fact that this bill does not define biological sex, other than just defining biological sex as biological sex. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today.
I think we've done this before.
We have. I guess my question is, in your opinion, can biological sex change after birth? Can it change, or is the sex at birth definitive?
I definitely believe it is definitive.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Do you also acknowledge or agree that there are legal medical procedures in the state of New Hampshire that could result in somebody born, say as a female, based on your definition, to have the musculature that I think you're concerned about in sports, or to have the physical characteristics, you know, body hair and stature that you maybe are concerned about in bathrooms, and that essentially this would still permit that to be the case. You could still have that person with the greater musculature through legal medical intervention playing on essentially a girl's team, as has happened in other states where this law has been enacted, or similar laws have been enacted.
Thank you, Representative. I don't think this bill talks about that distinction. It doesn't distinguish on that level to period. It doesn't distinguish that. This bill is basically about protecting individuals, whether in sports. It also does define about, I believe, ladies in prisons as well.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Perez.
Thank you. Thanks for taking. I have a statement, and it's one statement. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to another perhaps longer question. The preliminary part is, do you know whether I am transgender or whether Representative Rombo is transgender?
I don't know how that applies to this bill, Representative.
I'll do that in follow-up.
Let's,
Do you know-
this is, I'm not gonna turn this into a debate, so if you have a question, ask the
All right.
question, okay?
My question is, if after this hearing, I go into the men's room, Representative Rombo goes into the ladies' room, we do our business, we wash our hands, and we leave, how does anybody enforce this bill?
You know, I keep hearing that over and over and over again, and I think it's a nice way to avoid voting one way or another for this bill. I think we for years have all kinds of laws, whether it's a speeding law, how do you enforce it? Well, you see people speed at all? I do. How do you enforce it? Well, there happens to be a situation maybe that we get caught. Maybe there is an individual that is acting inappropriately in a bathroom, taking pictures, or making somebody feel uncomfortable. Well, that raises the flag. That might be the way it gets enforced. But I do believe if we do not act on this, there may be serious consequences up the road. And I'm going to tell you, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, if individuals like Stacy Lawton can go into the bathroom when they're 4th and 5th grade girls, and this man has done some very wicked things with his trans partner in a licensed facility, putting those children on display is evil. And it needs to be addressed. And this will come back. If this doesn't happen, it's coming back. Somebody needs to take a strong vote and vote in line with us. It's not a mandate. It's not a mandate, folks. Let's take care of it this time, right? Let's just take care of it and move on. Because I think it's putting people at odds with each other. And I think it's time we come together. I'm begging you to come together on this because it will not go away.
Other questions for this witness? Representative Smith.
Thank you. Just a very quick question. I really thank you very much for the effort that you have put into this and your commitment to the issue. Could you help me? I was under the impression that the former legislator to whom you referred was in fact prosecuted and convicted, so that even without the benefit of your well thought out proposal, the existing law in New Hampshire had the power and took the steps to hold that person accountable. Am I wrong about that?
I'm grateful for that question, and I'm not wrong about the fact that this individual also had access to the bathrooms prior to him being caught in the ladies' room when there were little children in there.
Thank you.
Right. Other questions? Yes, Representative Ball.
Thank you, Chair. And then perhaps you can help me understand something as a woman. And believe it or not, I was in high school in 1972 when Title IX was passed. And so I'm looking at this as my life experience of seeing women achieve something in getting rights, and now they're getting chipped away and we're losing them again. My question is, and I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is there a law in New Hampshire for indecent exposure?
I don't know.
There is. I believe it's law, it's 645, that a man cannot expose himself in a way that would affront another person or a woman. So what I have been trying to deal with or understand is, how is it okay for genitals to be shown to me, or against the law to be whipped out outside in the hallway, but we can walk into a ladies' room or in a locker room and those same genitals can be shown to me, and I have nothing I can do about it because they identify as a woman. I'm just wondering, how do we square that? If you could help me understand that, because that's the confusion I have been dealing with for all of these years as this is progressing.
Well, I think we passed this bill, number one. And I think, when I go to the gym, I haven't been in the ladies' locker room, but I know in my gym, there's showers, there's locker room, and the bathroom, and all in an open concept. And so sometimes if you walk into the men's locker room, it's not a pretty sight. So I would assume that the ladies' room is just the same way. And I do believe that individuals that take advantage of the situation right now can make women feel uncomfortable. And right now, I don't see a solution other than adding something like this. So,
Other question? Yes, Representative Horgan.
Not to belabor Representative Loudon's course case, I've actually looked at a lot of the federal court files which are available through PACER, so I'm not sure if that's exactly the crime, which crime the crime's committed, but crimes were horrific. She's pleaded guilty. She's going to be in prison for a very long time. And I'm glad, and by the way, I believe it's in a federal men's prison. But
There is,
but even if
the question is,
this law somehow prevented her, still from going into the ladies' room, what's to stop her from going into the boys' room or the men's room and then doing the same thing to young men or little boys or old men, as the case may be? So what's this? How does this bill solve that problem, or does it?
well, number one, it takes the risk out of the ladies' room, doesn't it?
But you follow up, but you don't. But I guess you do understand these things happen. Men do these things to other men and boys in men's rooms too. Anyways, aside from whatever's happening in the ladies' room.
Well, I think men know how to enforce the law.
all right, other, Representative Turk.
Thanks for taking the question. I just wanted to follow up on the statement which you mentioned, which has been said a lot, that this isn't a mandate. And I guess my question is this is a modification to what's titled the Law Against Discrimination. And I guess I'm wondering, do you need to mandate that someone has the ability to make a potentially discriminatory judgment, or does simply allowing someone the option of making a potentially discriminatory judgment invalidate the whole concept of prohibiting discrimination on that basis?
Well, the premise of your question is that they're discriminating I don't know, maybe arbitrarily, I don't know. However, if an institution wants to mandate biological sex or male and female, this bill protects them from liability of discrimination. It takes that essence out. So if you're a biological male and you go into a biological male bathroom, everything's great. But if you go into a female's bathroom, well, now you're going to have consequences, especially if somebody complains about it. So it may happen just like speeding. You might speed or you might drive drunk a half a dozen times. But there's going to be that one time where you do it and you get caught. And it could be the fact that you've made an individual uncomfortable to where it starts a red flag. For instance, well, we have a second floor, and there is an individual on staff who is, maybe she's 5 feet tall, thin as a rail, went into the bathroom, a 6 foot tall male figure with a beard was in the bathroom. She felt intimidated. Doesn't matter how he's dressed. She left the bathroom until he left. Nothing she could do about it. So are her rights not as important? That's what we're pushing. That's what's been pushed. And it's got to stop. I'm pleading with you. It's got to stop.
All right, other
That's why we're
questions,
putting in this bill.
other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Committee, thank you very much, and I appreciate the questions.
So I have a number of other witnesses. With regard to all of the other witnesses, because of time constraints, and frankly, because we've, as a number of the representatives have on the committee here have already indicated, we've heard the subject matter of this bill many times. So I'm going to impose a 2-minute time limit on all other witnesses. So next, I'm going to recognize Representative Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien, please.
Thank you. I have a lot to say on this. Well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien. I'm in my 5th term representing Derry. I think that one of the things we should think about when we address this issue is why were individual facilities created for men and for women in terms of bathrooms, jails, sports? Why was that created in the first place? And were the people that did that, were they wrong? Our ancestors, were they wrong? Were they bigots? Were they transphobes? Was there something wrong with them? I have a lot of adverse experiences. I think what they call them now is ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. When I was 15 years old, 40 years ago, around this time of year, every time just the seasons changing reminds me of, it's very hard for me to talk about. But I'm glad to do it because it was one of the most influential things that happened to me in my entire life. When I was 15 years old, I was placed in foster care in Massachusetts. My social worker was looking for a home for me for a long time. It was really hard to find something for a 15-year-old, for teenagers. I did not have problems with the legal system. I did not have mental health problems. I was an ideal candidate. There still wasn't anything available except a group foster home, which was an emergency placement, and I found myself there. When I arrived, I'll say it quickly, okay. When I arrived, it was all female. And when the woman who ran the foster home told me that the state was encouraging her to take boys in, but she did not want to do it because they hit on the girls in the middle of the night when the girls don't want it. I think you can read between the lines what I'm saying, and you can also make a pretty educated guess about why a lot of females wind up in the foster care system because of sexual abuse, and that's a very common reason.
All right,
I am not finished, sir. I'm not finished.
I'm sorry, Representative. I imposed a 2-minute limit, and the 2-minute limit applies whether you're a representative or not. So respectfully, I'm sorry.
All right, well then I will wrap up. When the boys were about to come in, I fled. There is a good reason for why we have these kind of facilities. They should remain male and female. I do have trouble here at the State House.
Thank you, Representative. Next, I'm going to call on Representative Sarah Landers, please. Orrs, please. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Representative Cyril Orrs, representing Merrimack 13, Chichester, Pittsfield. And as the rep in front of me was trying to testify to, I have had many female reps, about 10 or 12, I'm not sure, come to me and looking for help because they've gone into the restrooms in our state house and there's some pervert in there. And let me tell you something. We closed the state mental hospitals and now these people are running around on the streets. It's not often a man gets raped by a woman. Women get raped by men. And anybody that wants to think that this isn't a problem, we got a problem. And I believe the governor would sign off on a bill like this if her daughters ended up in this situation. I'm surprised the women haven't taken care of this problem themselves. I think if a man wants to be a woman, he should be castrated. Let's get it over with. You want to be a woman? Let's get it over with. I mean, think about it. We haven't seen this kind of doctoring, if you want to call it healthcare, since like the 1930s when people took other people's bodies and made lampshades out of them. We got doctors turning men into women, women into men. I mean, it's a circus. You used to have to go to Barnum and Bailey's or whatever and pay $0.25 to see this kind of thing. Now you can go to sections 4 and 5 in the State House and see it. It's ridiculous. I think I'll wrap up right there.
Hang on, what, I'm sorry.
I'll take questions. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant 3, 4, and 5. I'll take questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Next, I'm going to turn to, call on Attorney Ian Hewitt, please.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Ian Hewitt for Cornerstone in support of Senate Bill 552. As Representative Smith said, there have been like a dozen of these biological sex separation bills this year. We support this one specifically because we think it's the legally soundest and most well-crafted of all of the biological sex separation bills. I've read almost all, most of the case law in this area from around the country, from certainly circuit courts of appeals and a lot of federal district courts over the last couple of years. And it does matter whether a law like this is well crafted or not. I think a lot of legislators are fatalists about this, and they think all the liberal jurists are going to find you have to use gender identity alone, and then they're just going to kind of layer their jurisprudential reasoning on top of that. And even if that's mostly true, it's not entirely true. We've seen over the past few years a number of judges appointed by Obama or Clinton or Biden who have acknowledged the legitimacy of biological sex separation in published opinions. So it's important to have a well-crafted law, regardless of the politics. And one of the major things that makes this law more well-crafted than other similar bills is it doesn't try to get into a legal code-like definition of biological sex based on birth certificates or genetic characteristics. Having read a lot of cases, I have never seen a law where having an exhaustive definition like that helped a state succeed in its biological sex separation policy. And on the other hand, I've read many, many cases where the attempt to create an exhaustive legal code-like definition of biological sex resulted in bills like this being tangled up in their own web in an unnecessary way that undermined the bill. So this bill takes a more elegant, common sense approach that we think will fare better in the courts. And for that reason, we would ask you to pass this bill.
All right, thank you. Questions for this witness? Representative Perez.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my question. Are you aware, I think it's NYU Hospital in New York City has stopped doing any surgery for biological sex changes, and multiple doctors have come forward stating their profound regret for having doing it?
I'm not aware of that, Representative, but that doesn't surprise me because I think in multiple areas we see kind of a collapse in the elite consensus in this country around gender ideology. And I think you especially see it in the legal arena. You have liberal jurists, like I mentioned, who are increasingly acknowledging the legitimacy of upholding biological sex, and even organizations like the ACLU, who've appeared on many of these bills over the past few years, they now in court make much more moderate arguments than they used to make a few years ago. And I think that's because the consensus is shifting.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Horgan.
Well, I won't get in the ACLU. There is a person from the ACO sitting behind you, may or may not fill out pink cards. My question is, what exactly is the enforcement mechanism? So we're supposed to, it's in the chapter about the Commission on Human Rights. So what exactly does somebody who feels that they're aggrieved because there's biological males, whether in the ladies' room or whatever? So what's the enforcement mechanism if this law gets passed? Like, how does the Commission on Human Rights even deal with these things?
The Commission on Human, thank you, Representative. The Commission on Human Rights has no basis under this bill to initiate any kind of investigation for a reported violation of the language in this bill. There is no enforcement mechanism because this bill is a clarification that certain conduct is not prohibited. So it removes enforcement. It doesn't create any additional enforcement.
Other questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I have daughters, and I would do anything to protect them, even today. My question is, then I don't understand, why is it wrong wanting to protect biological females?
Well, I think what we would see, on bills like this in years past, and what we tended to see in courts, especially 5 to 10 years ago, is the other side of this issue would begin their argument by saying, this is a case about transgender girls. And that phrase, transgender girls, which kind of assumes that we have a certain kind of gender ideology conception of what sex is, and the female sex includes both transgender and cisgender females. Once you start with that conclusion, that premise, you've built in the conclusion that separation based on biological sex has to be prohibited. So I think the reason is that particular premise, that gender ideological premise. And once you recognize that there is, in addition to gender identity, such a thing as biological sex, and that we've always differentiated between the two just fine in all kinds of contexts, then you can see that that premise doesn't make any sense.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call on Taylor Maine, please.
Good morning, Chairperson and committee members. My name is Taylor Maine. I am a community organizer with the ACLU of New Hampshire, where I work with community members every single day throughout the state. I am here today because bills like SB552 hurt the same New Hampshire families and community members I meet and work with every single day. Just this session, 5 other bills like this one have been introduced. And let me tell you, Granite Staters are exhausted. Parents with trans kids who I talk with are exhausted from having to defend their children's privacy from extreme legislation like SB 552 over and over again. Teachers and coaches that I talk with are exhausted from constantly having to tell lawmakers that their students' dignity matters over and over again. Community members are exhausted by discriminatory legislation being pushed from multiple angles instead of legislation that will help Granite Staters thrive. So today, that's why you do not see as many people in this room testifying, because this legislation is exhausting. 6 bills exactly like this means 12 hearings, all scheduled at different times. And frankly, it's insulting. Frankly, Granite Staters cannot keep taking time off of work, off of school, off of other caregiving responsibilities to continuously have to sit in a room like this and beg for human decency from lawmakers who are supposed to be defending our rights. You would be exhausted too, and you would be insulted too. But don't mistake the lack of a huge crowd here today for any kind of complicity. If you reference the online testimony for this legislation, you will see that nearly 300 Granite Staters took time out of their day to register opposition, and that is 15 times as many people who signed in to support it. I want to be able to go back to the hundreds of community members who have told me time and time again that they are frightened and horrified by the impact of these bills, and I want to let them know that this legislation will not move forward. I hope that this committee can put an end to the exhaustion, to the fear-mongering, and to the insult, and help me bring that news to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Representative Perez.
Are you aware that the parents of young girls and the grandparents of young girls are also exhausted and tired of being fearful?
Yeah, thank you for that. The community members that I talk to again every single day, that's not what I hear from folks on the ground. I was also a young girl once. My mom was very protective over me, and that's not a concern that we ever had.
Other
Thank you.
questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Hazel Kane, please.
Do you hear me?
There, yep.
There we
you
go. Well, I thank the Honorable Committee for having me here today. My name is Hazel Kane. I'm testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 552. I think we just have to get something straight. We have to tell it like it is. Trans women are women. Some women are born with brown skin, some are born with light skin, some are born with green eyes, and some are born with blue eyes. Some have uteri, some have vulvas, some have XY chromosomes and penises. And I'm going to be quite frank with you, and I apologize for who I will offend. If you are a woman with a vulva and you are uncomfortable seeing a woman with a penis, too bad. You have to get over it. There are women, white women, who are uncomfortable being around brown women. We did that a century ago with segregation, with Jim Crow. People decided that because you had dark skin, you were more dangerous, you were more likely to commit violent crimes, and because of that, you had to be cast away. You couldn't be in the same restaurant as a white person. You couldn't be in the same bathroom or the locker room. You couldn't even drink from the same fountain. And we're in the same era right now. You would think we would learn something, but apparently we didn't. We are saying somehow that because statistically people with penises and XY chromosomes tend to be more aggressive because those are men, that somehow a transgender woman falls within those statistical norms. By definition, a transgender woman is not within those statistical norms. They are going out of their way to take medications to reduce libido and aggression. They are altering their bodies to be incapable of penetrating a person. They are clearly not of the category that should be prohibited from these bathrooms. Some people are going to be uncomfortable. We cannot let their implicit biases, their irrational fears, their own trauma history take away rights that other people are entitled to under the law. We live in a free society, and that produces discomfort to it sometimes, and we have to accept that. I will gladly take questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, Tanya, oh boy, Tanya Kreger, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yep, press the button so there you go. Thank you.
All right. So I just want to address a couple of things right off the top, and I'll be really quick. First, on the matter of gender dysphoria being a mental illness, it is, according to the DSM, not considered a mental illness in the classical sense. So it's not. On NYC not doing gender reassignment surgery, they are. I have a consultation next December. I'm here to say just a couple of things. First off, I'm here to say that I'm a trans woman, but look at me, right? I'm not going to go into the ladies' room. I'm not, I'm very early in my transition, so I'm not going to go into the ladies' room, right? I'd make them feel uncomfortable. So I don't. But there are trans women who look a heck of a lot more like women than men. In fact, they're women, right? So I would not expect to see them in the men's room. So that's like that's, you guys are legislating something for something that doesn't happen, okay? The other thing that I want to say is I really do have concerns about trans women getting sent into men's prisons, because it's a quick Google search, you can look it up. They're 6 times more likely to be sexually assaulted, and over 50% of trans women that are in men's facilities have been sexually assaulted. I'll take questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Rebecca Hoskins, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the House Judiciary Committee. It is good to see you all again. As you know, I am Rebecca Hoskins. I'm a lifelong resident of the state, and I currently reside in Concord. I've come to speak to you today to urgently oppose SB552. This bill poses a great risk of harm to all Granite Staters. This bill and other anti-LGBTQ bathroom bans like it are not going to be keeping public or private spaces safe. In fact, bills like this make public spaces decidedly less safe. One of the reasons Governors Sununu and Ayotte have vetoed bathroom bills in the past is their inability to be enforced. How exactly are you going to stop all trans people from using the bathroom? Even if you believe someone is trans, you could be wrong. This was very much the case last year in Massachusetts when it was reported a woman using the bathroom in a Boston hotel was asked to leave by a male security guard. Let's just stop and think about that for a moment. Someone made a snap judgment about another person's gender and reported them for using the restroom. Then, a male security guard walked into the woman's bathroom, banged on the stall, and demanded that woman leave. As it turned out, the person who made the snap judgment was wrong, and that security guard had just harassed a cisgender woman. Are we about to make bathrooms in New Hampshire the Wild West, safe for no one? That story makes me fearful that something like that could happen to me if I were to use the bathroom wearing a suit. And in terms of sports, are we about to punish the one girl on the Concord High wrestling team? The rest of her teammates are male. She is the first girl to win the state championship 4 times. She is not trans, but she's a female on a male team. Would she not be allowed to wrestle people that match her weight class going forward simply because she's a girl? Furthermore, this bill only has a vague understanding of actual biological sex. Intersex people use the bathroom, play sports, and potentially go to prison. Bills like this always erase the existence of intersex people. If this bill became law...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your time is up. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, David Trumbull, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull from the town of Ware, and I oppose this bill. These bills all end up suffering from the same problem, which is that after questioning that you end up seeing they're based on stereotypes, that all transgender people are ill, perverted, definitive. Any action that's bad by one transgender person reflects on all transgender people, and that's ridiculous. Transgender people are real, transgender women are women, transgender men are men, and intersex people don't fit neatly into biological sex roles. I would encourage you to get to know some transgender people. If you're confused about this issue, that will probably help you alleviate many of your concerns. On to a few points. On the bathroom issue, fundamental rights are at stake here. And to take away fundamental rights, you have to have the least restrictive alternative. If you pass this bill, you should add an amendment that requires anybody who adopts this discriminatory policy would have to have at least one all-gender restroom. They're already in the International Plumbing Code, which we adopted a couple of years ago. That would be a less restrictive alternative. When it comes to sports, you should adopt a less restrictive alternative that any child who began taking testosterone suppressing medication for at least 12 months before they hit puberty, so a transgender girl could compete in the female division. They would not have gone through a male growth spurt. They would have no testosterone. They would have none of the competitive advantages. That would be a less restrictive alternative that would protect their dignity and their rights. The education factor. The law serves to educate. It's not just about making rules. Either you're going to educate our state that we should be bigoted, prejudiced, and stereotyped, or you're going to educate our state that we should treat everybody with respect and dignity. I hope you'll choose the second option. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call on Nancy Brennan, please.
Hi, thank you for taking my testimony today. Nancy Brennan, I'm from Ware, and I would like to piggyback on a couple of things that my friend from Ware just said. I didn't prepare testimony. I usually come with folders this thick proving that transgender people as a whole are not a threat. It always bothers me to hear Stacy Lawton's name over and over and over again among transgender women, among cisgender women, among transgender and cisgender men. Are there bad actors? Yes, but that does not equal that everyone is bad. And I too wish we could have conversations. I wish you guys would have some kind of a study committee. I have talked to people who have written these bills who have never sat down with a transgender person and listened to them. And I think that's a big problem because then we have it on one side, we think that all transgender people are evil who want to hurt somebody. And it just isn't true. And I really think a study committee is what you need. I think you need to talk to these people. You need to talk to parents of transgender people. I do not believe that harm is happening. I believe harm is happening in this country, in this state, mostly by men. We've all seen bits of the Epstein files, and we have people at very high levels hurting women, hurting little girls, and that's what we should be concerned with. Not some trans woman who's just trying to pee. I have a friend who, when she gets to my house, immediately uses my bathroom because once she crosses our borders, she is afraid to stop at a public restroom. That's not who we are.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, Sullivan Bono, please.
Thank you for hearing my testimony today. As many of the people before me have discussed, how would we enforce this bill? And I think from other people's testimonies, the answer has become very clear to me. Either an invasive measure or through visual profiling. And as many have said, this becomes a case of assessing when is feminine enough? When is masculine enough? We have no way of proving who is what gender identity based on visual profiling. And I think doing so is harmful both to trans individuals and cis women, because there are plenty of cis women who do not fit the mold of gender norms. And I'm sure there are many of cis men out there that do not visually conform to gender norms as well. And I think that when we're talking about protecting cis people, we should also talk about what can be done to protect those who visually do not conform to gender norms. And I think the larger goal of this bill, honestly, is to push conformity. Because if a person does not conform visually to gender norms, then they are under threat of being interrogated under this bill. And does not improve the safety of people at all under this bill, regardless if they are trans or not. I think that in terms of treating people with dignity, that is something that we should go forward with acknowledging that people have a right to have public access to bathrooms. I believe we should not make snap assumptions about people's gender identity and whether it or not it corresponds with their biological sex, because doing that can cause more harm than good. And as we have seen before, there are people that will go into bathrooms and make assumptions as such and respond with hostility, and then people get assaulted physically, sexually, as one has stated before, that trans women are very likely to be assaulted.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Do people have any representatives here have questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. I don't have any other pink cards. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on SB552? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on SB552